Welcome back, dear friends. It's great to see you again. In case we haven't been introduced, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about playing with ourselves, because we're doing a role-playing game review of Into the Unknown, a solo adventure written by Ben Barsh, son of the founder of Pacesetter Games, Bill Barsh, who's a dear friend of the show. Into the Unknown is an introductory adventure that takes you from first level to fifth level, all on your lonesome. No DM, no other players, just you and the book. And I love that, because ever since I was a kid, I've been a fan of choose your own adventure books and the TSR Endless Quest books, which I've been relentlessly collecting for years now. I mean, check this out, I'm kind of a big fan. And one thing that's intrigued me in all of those books has been just the sheer imagination of the scenarios involved. You can get some legitimately crazy stuff because you don't really have to worry about the suspension of disbelief because it's the author and you. So whatever crazy stuff the author puts in there, you're the only person who has to judge them about it. It's not a whole group of people sitting there staring at you going, what the hell is wrong with you? So it's a different experience. Now, a key difference between Into the Unknown and those Choose Your Own Adventure and Endless Quest books that I talked about is the books, they just involve making decisions. There's no die rolls involved. However, Into the Unknown does involve die rolls. So there's a chance that your decision might not work out because of that random number generator that you messed with doomed your efforts. So how do you write a system that does that? Well, we're going to get into that, and we're going to compare it to some of the other DM yourself style rules interpretation manuals that I've seen before. But for now, let's get into talking about this thing. Published in 2021, I picked this up at North Texas RPG Con directly from Ben Barsh himself. And as mentioned, as the son of Pacesetter Games Bill Barsh, Ben Barsh has been involved in role-playing games for years. Not just playing them, but writing and publishing them. I have several of his titles on my shelves. So let's see how this thing sells itself. Welcome to a world of new adventure. The day has finally come. Your training at Farador Keep has come to its end. You are now a fully fledged adventurer, ready to make your name known in all the lands. However, this time you will go it alone. Farador is a relatively peaceful region. However, menacing monsters reside in the shadows of even the brightest lights. You are being called to explore abandoned mines, save villages from devastating foes, and claim your name as the next true adventurer. All this and more will be possible as you go into the unknown. Into the Unknown is a true solo adventure for characters level 1 to 5 for the 5th edition game system. And Into the Unknown comes in 3 different rule varieties. I got the 5e edition one because I thought that 5e characters on their own are pretty durable, pretty adaptable and survivable. So if I'm going to be going off on a solo adventure, that might be my best chance at making it. However, it also comes in BX rule system and Swords and Wizardry rule sets. Now, since I don't have the BX or the Swords version, I do have the 5e version, so that's the version I'm going to be speaking to in this review. Now, who all was involved in this thing? Looking at the credit page, we've got 3 different credits for Ben Barsh as author, designer, and project manager. So I guess when you're the guy making the book, you can toot your own horn however much you want. The next most important person on the list is the editor, Jeff Harkness. Now, I haven't seen the name Jeff Harkness before, but I do want to say this book is very well edited. I didn't find any mistakes anywhere in there. All the information flowed logically. And y'all know when I find something to harp on in a manuscript, I pick, because I do editing work. I get paid for it. And I'm a writer, so I'm often concerned about how good the wordsmithing quality is. Well, Jeff Harkness, no weakness in that game that I found. Now, when we get into the art, though, I'm going to complain some. So the cover art by Dmitry Yakovsky is fine, nothing wrong with it. It's evocative of Dungeons and Dragons and adventuring. It gets a little hazy here and there, but it's fine. It plays with the theme that this is a solo adventure because we got one poor schlub going out to face his death. But the interior art, well, we get some really questionable decisions made in here. While some of the interior art is good, much of it is this weird blend of noticeable additions painted over what were obviously photos of real people and environments. It's like the artist couldn't decide if they wanted to go with that Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings rotoscope look, if they wanted to go for some sort of cozy pictures, or if they wanted to go for something just maybe they really liked it, but I don't dig it. It just seems clumsy and inartful to me. And this piece right here, this is my pet peeve of the entire book. And mind you, when I get into reviewing the actual content of the text and the adventure you go on, you're not going to hear much any complaints from me. But this art really needed some help. I mean, look at this. This is obviously a couple people superimposed over a lightly stylized, maybe Photoshop background taken from a bar. How do I know it's from a modern bar with electricity? Because the alcoves have lighting in them. You may have been to this bar. This looks exactly like what many bars look like. Now you could say, Steven, it's a fancy bar. Those are continual light spells. Yeah, whatever. That's bull crap. This is derivative. So I can't say I'm a fan of much of the art direction. Like I said, some of it's good, and I'll show it to you. But most of it's this weird, muddy, like cozy, uncanny valley stuff. I don't get it. So in addition to the cover, Dimitri also contributes to the interior art, where we also get works by Raven Evermore and Francesca Frizzanelli. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell that any of them put signatures in their work, so I can't tell one from another. So I'm just going to have to blame all of them for the weirdness that I saw. Now our cartography is in much better hands. That is by a dear friend, Keelan Halverson. So our maps generally look good. There's only one I've got a couple picks on, but I don't know that he's responsible for it. It might have been one of the other artists. But the dungeon maps, the encounter area maps that you're going to be using in the adventure, no problem with them. I think they're just fine. And for layout, we got Susie Mosby, which I think she did a great job overall because, as I mentioned, the text is easily understandable. I know exactly where I need to go at any given time. I know where all the information is that I need. But the table of contents is at the back of the book. This is the first book I've ever seen where the list of things that are in the book is at the end. I've got questions. And then we get a list of the heroic playtesters that went through this, I guess, on their own. And don't underestimate the value of a good playtester because the feedback they provide really helps make sure that the product that you're making is a good idea to anybody besides the designer. We get an introduction by Gnome Alfie Fitz, who we're going to see again and again throughout the adventure, and he's a warm welcome into the solo system rules. And it's important that they get these right because in a single player game, the temptation to cheat, to bend the rules, to just make it do what you want to do is always going to be present because there's no one there to hold you accountable. Now, you may hold you accountable, but it's good to have a system that acknowledges the risk and the perils of having a single point of failure adventuring party, because if that one character goes down, you're host, and gives you some tools to help mitigate risk that goes with that while not candy coating everything and making your path lined with pillows. And we get 3 pages of them doing that, explaining the solo system, and I liked it. Starting off, we get introduced to the concept of adventure points. These points can be used by the player to do a re-roll or to gain the minimum success necessary to move in the direction they want to when presented with a challenge in the adventure. They even call these things mulligans, which I do in my own games, where every session I give each player 1 mulligan where they can re-roll a die, which if it turns up a failure that time as well, converts to an automatic minimum success to the thing they're trying to do. And while you do get a decent amount of adventure points to use throughout this module, they're not overwhelming. There will still be challenges. You do have to ration these things, and I went through quite a few of them myself. Now I ended the adventure with several still in hand, but this really helped me out. While I faced plenty of perils on the adventure, I knew that I had a backup in case things went bad. And then we get into the rules for player character creation. And here we're really system agnostic. It tells you basically make a first level character like you would in the system that you're trying to use. And since this is 5e and this is my first solo adventure module for 5e that I'm playing, I trotted back out my first 5th edition character, a Fey warlock named Odysseer, who I fashioned after Sean Connery as the Green Knight in The Sword of the Valiant. Because if you ever get a choice to be Sean Connery as the Green Knight, obviously you should take that. And my particular Fey patron, He's not your typical Oberon or Titania, flighty elf spirit going around. No. He is a spirit of the world that represents the apex predator for the world I'm in. He's this great stag. He's this giant stag named the Great Beast with sharp teeth, forward-facing predator eyes, and my pack started with him trying to kill me. That's the kind of patron I've got. And so that rubs off on the character. Competition and dominance, very important points for him. And we also get 2 new races and 2 new subclasses in this book. We get the Bijou Dwarves, and they're really the Bougie Dwarves, a decidedly different kind of that race. Almost everybody else depicts dwarves as dour, humorless, taciturn creatures, whereas these, they get charisma bonuses. They like the nice things in life. They probably do all the product in their beard and their hair. They're skilled jewelers, and so they're decidedly different. The other are the Fin folk, and these are fish people, but actually law and good inclined, and they are survivalists. They come in 2 different flavors, the hunters and the sages, depending on whether you want to specialize in physical or mental aspects. And then the 2 subclasses. Then we get the elemental ranger, who does make a cool ranger, but they had to make the ranger a spellcaster in order to do it, which highlights how much the 5e ranger sucks. Then we get the Ruin Seeker Barbarian, and that's just an Eldritch Knight, but for barbarians and using charisma. These classes are interesting enough on their own, but 5e definitely has weaknesses that designers have to overcome by basically making everyone a spellcaster. And we get a discussion of difficulty modes, of story mode versus hard mode, and considerations you should have for each. Companions, which are helper NPCs that go on adventures with you, how you get them, how much they cost to keep around, and why they can't level up. And we get advice for running combat, which is good for both in this module and in group play. We even get a discussion about fleeing combat, because death is a very real possibility in this module. So let me read that to you. Fleeing combat. Some scenarios will come up where your character may want to flee from a battle they cannot handle. For the utmost challenge of this adventure, do not abuse this feature. After all, character death is a part of the game. However, if you do find yourself stacked against odds you know you cannot handle at this time, you may flee. There are some restrictions to this mechanic, so it's not just an automatic out. There are restrictions governing it. You may not flee if your movement is slower than the monster's movement, which might mean you're screwed no matter what. If you flee and continue the storyline as if you were victorious, you do not collect the rewards from your quest giver. If you return to the area from which you fled, roll 2 Wandering Monster checks on the respective table as you journey back. I respect that, because it does bring up the point that a lot of players do not keep in mind that running away is often an option that you should exercise. But in a game where the temptation to cheat or fudge is strong, this adds some teeth via the system rules, help keep you honest, and to emphasize the realism of the challenge that you're experiencing in this fantasy scenario. If the opponent is just faster than you, you got to think of something else, Buster. So that had me checking my speed against the NPCs just to see, is this an encounter I even could run away from? And our little gnome friend orients us to how to read this text, the map, that it uses a milestone leveling system, how treasure, encumbrance, and resting works, and how the adventure is structured. Now, this is intended for multiple playthroughs, and there are 3 separate main story arcs with their own side quests. Now, I've only played through one of these main story arcs because I like to savor the experience. I like to have something to look forward to, more adventures on the horizon. So I didn't devour all of this thing from start to finish. I just picked one for now, and I'm going to come back in the future to check out the other 2. But I'm going to give you a brief overview of the main story arc I went through to give you an idea of what you can find in these pages. And the spoiler warning for this one is that I'm going to do my darndest, with just a very few exceptions, to give you the flavor of what's going on, to not go section by section, to not go room by room and spoil all the surprises that are in store. Because in a solo adventure, there's not the opportunity for spontaneity or changing what's already been written to keep players on their toes. It's just you with the material for the first time, and so if I tell you how every single thing goes, then I've spoiled the surprise and the suspense of the module, and so your enjoyment. So I'm going to use broad strokes to get you along the path I took, and in just a few sections we're going to drill down to show you how this thing is structured. And the area that I picked for the detailed description, you're probably going to want to go through that yourself, regardless of what I have to tell you, just to see how it goes for you. Now, regardless of which of the 3 main story arcs you wind up on, they all start at Ironcrad Mine, Chapter 1, Into the Unknown. Congratulations! You are the most recent graduate of Farador Keep, the most prestigious college for adventurers in all the lands. Now you are more than capable of setting out to go on your own adventures. To have a greater challenge, you have decided to go it alone. This likely will be a difficult task, but your record as a graduate speaks for itself. As tradition goes, you will take your first quest from the college itself. From there, your destiny is your own as many doors open to different paths. You have been given a quest to travel to Ironcrad Mine, east of Farador Keep, to investigate the disturbance that caused the mining crews to abandon the mine. The reports from the miners speak of reptile dogs attacking them on sight. Since the miners are not trained fighters, they were told by the foreman to flee while he made the last stand. This attack happened a day ago, so there is still time to investigate and retake the mine. Alfie Fitz, head historian of Farador Keep, has provided you with a map of the mine. When you're ready, read on to begin your first adventure. Then we get the explanation that the mine is not far from the keep. In fact, you believe you've been to it on multiple occasions to check on the keep's iron provisions. You recall how much Alfie loved giving you busy work. And there's a clear path to the mine, and the journey takes approximately 1 hour at a moderate pace with a few water breaks. And once you get to the entrance, before you is an entrance to what must be Ironcrad Mine. Outside the entrance, you see miscellaneous mining equipment, such as 2 mine carts, shovels, pickaxes, and rope. The warm glow of the sun shines into the cave, revealing a path leading in. Then you get a few details of what you can find in that area, and if you decide to enter, it tells you to go to Area 2 for more details. And it also gives the environmental detail about the need for a light source or dark vision. And what follows is a basic and short dungeon crawl, but I tell you what, as a first level nobody on my own with no backup, I felt the tension. I exercised caution, but fortunately the dice were with me. Almost throughout the entire module, the dice were on my side. So I was able to survive and come out victorious. For the mines, we get a cool map, and we also encounter skill checks along the way to discover items and rooms, with success or failure making a difference. However, at the end, when you've cleaned out the dungeon, you can backtrack on your way out and repeat the checks that you might have failed. So it helps you as a solo player have more chances to experience everything that you might have failed a dice roll to discover, but didn't quite seem worth an adventure point to you. And sometimes my second rolls turned out better than my first rolls, and I found neat stuff, but sometimes some secrets were just kept from me. And once you've completed the mine and exited, you return to Farador Keep to find Alfie with a look of concern on his face. He is generally an upbeat and eccentric gnome. Only a serious matter could bring him down. He looks up and says,
Yes, you did well. Here is your reward. Now the real work begins.
You receive 25 gold pieces for completing the adventure. You also level up to level 2. When you are ready, see Chapter 2, Adventurer's Call. And here is where we get the decision point of what our main quest is going to be. And we get this flavor text here from Alfie that breaks down the different options that you've got. A little bit of detail to help you decide what kind of adventure you might be interested in. And then we get instructions on which chapter to go to carry on. Alfie's look of despair does not wash away with news of your success. Normally, he would host a small celebration with an adventurer's return after their first solo quest. You see him peering down at 3 pieces of parchment on a table. He says,
Makandar, Dunbuldar, Starland. They each sent out a call to arms at nearly the same time. This is quite strange, but great for you, I guess. You'll have no shortage of work in the coming weeks, I'm sure of that.
He pushes the parchment toward you and says,
First up, we have word from an anonymous nobleman in Makandar. They write that they've caught word of a group of smugglers trafficking of the city. Smugglers are usually handled by the Royal Guard, but the Queen's best men are out on assignment. They need a graduate, and there is none better than you. If you choose this quest, Sir Roderick will fill you in on the rest of the details.
He motions toward the second parchment and says,
Starland Bay, home of the Finfolk. I know we don't often take students down to see them, but they are truly good people. Folk? I digress. They love to fight their own battles, but since they do fall within Farador's borders, they occasionally ask for aid. When I say occasionally, I mean it. Haven't seen them ask in my lifetime. Doesn't seem like anything too serious. Some skirmishes with some lizard folk left their best warriors injured. I know you could easily handle that one.
Alfie grabs the last parchment and carefully lays it in front of you. The flourishing script is written in gold ink, not the normal black. The letters seem to dance as you read it.
He explains, I don't have to tell you who this is from. Yes, the Bijou Dwarves and Dunbuldur should be cast out of Farador if you ask me. If they didn't give charitably to Lake Haven, I'm sure the Queen would be redrawing the map as we speak. The opposite of the Finfolk, they love asking for help from the keep. Something about a war camp of orcs who slipped past the garrison leading to Mogboldar. Only take that one if you have patience. Personal opinions aside, it may make for an eccentric adventure. I did catch one mistake there. Oh, I take back all the good things I said about Harkness. And then on the right, we get a little boiling down what all's going on with each of these and which chapter to go to. I went with Mayhem at Makandar. Your mission is to investigate and stop the smuggling, but you have only one lead to follow up. There is a secret meeting planned at Charlie's Still in Makandar between a representative of the smugglers and some other unknown person. If you accept this quest, see Chapter 3. Then we get a 2-page map of Farador, which holds up if you don't look too closely at where the towns and forts look crudely photoshopped onto a stylized Google map. So Chapter 3, Mayhem at Makandar, starts with meeting the quest giver, who I didn't trust, and getting to select a companion. Being a warlock of a predatory stag spirit, I went with Finna, a female human cleric, both because she could heal, and because I have ambitions of building a harem, which I want to stock with women, not equal opportunity. The town of Makandar has all the shopping you could want, a bank not based on fiat currency and illusion magic, and a variety of inns you can stay at. Helpfully, there is a magic shop, Kiziwinks, that allows you to swap magic items your class can't use for ones you can. For example, I found a longsword +1 in a dungeon, which did me no good, but this allowed me to swap that weapon out for one I could use. So again, we're eliminating the need to fudge or cheat to make the adventure work. I could have just said, well, the module says it's a longsword +1, so I'm going to say it's what I want it to be +1. Well, this gives support in the text, in the logic of the system, for me to get something useful to me without violating the integrity of the story, or my own. And the city is a real contrast to the typical grim, dark, and scumbag settings I'm used to, and that by itself is refreshing. It's fantasy escapism. The fantasy world doesn't have to be as crappy as reality. So back to the adventure. What this one focuses on is a series of social challenges where I had to chase down clues, talk to different people, infiltrate their trust, gain details, and hunt down the spy. And there was a shocking variety of social encounters I could have in the bar where I was sent to. Some of it was important, some of it wasn't. But it was interesting that I got role-playing opportunities in a solo game. And it felt like legit role-playing opportunities. So I tracked down the details, found my spy, and then there was a foot race because they didn't want to be caught. There was a series of challenges that were challenging. But finally, I got my man, took him down, and snatched a letter off of him when my quest giver showed up in this dark alley. Now, the note I took off of him provided details on the smuggler's lair, so the criminals he's working with. And then the text orders me to Chapter 6. I go there, and the quest giver tells me, good job. Take a break and prep for the next phase. I also level up and get to pick a second companion, and I went with the other chick that was available, Amisra, because that harem ain't going to build itself. This is also where I'm offered 3 side quests I can go on before pursuing the main story. And I get basic descriptions to help me choose which ones, if any, I want to go do. Now I'll end up doing all 3 because I like side quests and want to bulk up for the challenges ahead. And these are pretty cool side quests. And I don't want to spoil them all, so I'll give a couple teases and go into depth with one of them. I survived a near TPK and coming up short in a fishing contest or a really cool prize, but Benedict Farm. This place surprised and delighted. I laughed out loud at least twice, and it held interesting challenges while nailing an overall cozy mood. So my Fey Warlock and his harem head over to meet fussy and adorable older married couple Ben and Joanne. Ben's always trying new things out around the farm and bought some chickens off a shifty merchant. One of the chickens went from teeny chick to a massive aggressive clucker, and that's what you're here to deal with. But that's not all you're here to deal with, because the NPCs tell us that there's a number of issues going on around the farm. So you can head into the barn where there might be wasps, but there might be treasure. You can go to the coop where they've locked the giant chicken in, or you could go investigate the cattle pen just to make sure that you're covering all your bases. And there's areas for each.
So I went into the barn to see if I could find out what's going on in there, to see what that treasure might be. But I'm also wary because the NPCs warned me that there were wasps in there. Now, as I walk into the place, I'm caught off guard as I trip over a shovel that throws me off balance. This is where I need to make a skill check. So roll a DC 12 dexterity check. If you succeed, see area 2A. If you fail, see area 2B. I was lucky enough to succeed, so I got a dexterous success. You catch your balance right away and even catch the shovel as it falls to the ground. You certainly avoided a tragedy here. The only thing you could think of in that split second was alerting the wasps. And when you're ready, see area 2C. Well, had I failed, I would have tripped over the shovel, which would send me and it crashing to the ground. And despite my attempt to calm the air, I would immediately hear a buzzing swarm and look up to see a swarm of wasps coming right for me. And I would have to fight them. If I defeat them, I could keep reading. If I was defeated, I would need to roll a new character. So that's how blunt the advice is in this thing. Death comes at you fast. So in 2C at the back of the barn, a quick search reveals there's not much more than the farming tools to help me. However, as Ben noted, there is something unique here. I found a scroll tucked inside a journal, which you can recover as a scroll of Shield of Faith, which is a pretty cool spell. So I faced a risk, and I got a reward for having done so. Now, while Area 3 has the dinosaur chicken in it, I want to go ahead to the cattle pen. We'll come back to that because the chicken is the main encounter of this side quest. So at the cattle pen, you step to the other side of the coop and find a cattle pen. 4 cows and 3 pigs with some piglets are milling about. A smaller piglet takes a liking to you. Roll a DC 12 animal handling check. If you're successful, see area 4A. If you fail, see area 4B. Unfortunately, I failed this one, but I didn't think to spend an adventurer point, and I'll never stop regretting it. 4B, handling failure. The pig scoffs at your existence. It trots away to the others, leaving you alone and embarrassed. This may be your greatest failure. When you're ready, see area 1 for more options. Man, when he described that cute little piglet coming up trying to be my friend, I wanted it to be my friend, and I failed. I'll never forgive myself. But had I succeeded, you pull some feed from your pocket that you scooped up on the way. You extend your hand as the piglet begins to have a small feast. It rubs its head against your hand once it finishes. You have a new friend. This is no real story implications. When you're ready, see area 1 for more options. I disagree. I think that makes the story all the more important because you're not just fighting for Farador. You're not just fighting for the people here. You're not fighting for Ben and Joanne. You're fighting for that little piglet. And so returning to the chicken coop, this is a moment you've been training for. Hunting dragons, fighting necromancers, saving entire kingdoms. It all pales in comparison to defeating the mega chicken. You step into the coop. For a moment, all is quiet, like the eve of Winter Father's Day. However, a second later, you hear a loud crash. The giant chicken breaks a wall in the coop as it reveals itself. It is the size of a small draft horse, but seemingly as strong as a giant. It attacks. And then you have to roll initiative against the greater chicken, which is a new monster in the back. And if you defeat the chicken, keep reading. If you're defeated, roll a new character. Fortunately, I won, so with a loud thud, the giant chicken falls in defeat. You may now don the title of Chicken Lord. All in a day's work for the Chicken Lord. When you are ready, proceed to Area 5 for your reward. With the chicken defeated, Ben and Joanne bring you into their home to congratulate you. Ben says, "Well done. We knew you could handle it. Now for the reward. I fished up 50 gold pieces in this tome. I think you'll find it useful." Joanne chimes in, "Now that is settled, won't you stay for dinner? I'm making one of my specialties, noodles and tomato sauce." If you accept the meal, keep reading. If you deny the meal, roll a new character. You fail the campaign. Never turn down a meal from Joanne. And at reading that, I had to text Ben to be like, what the heck did you just do here? That's pretty brutal. I don't think I've encountered something like that intense over something so minor in an adventure before, but I loved it. It added so much character. And he laughed at me laughing at his adventure. And if you're smart enough to accept, you have an exquisite meal with the couple, probably one of the best meals you've ever had. You swap adventuring stories because Ben used to be an adventurer. However, it's obvious Ben and Joanne have you beat. They have thrilling and heartwarming stories to share from all over Dagmore. Before it gets dark, you say your goodbyes and depart the farmstead, knowing that you always have a home with Ben and Joanne. And if you ever need to store items or treasure, you may do so at their farm. And you can rest there for free at any time. and he gives you a tome of knowledge, which is a friggin' helpful magic item, let me tell you that. And congratulations on successfully completing the adventure at Benedict Farms. When you're ready, proceed back to where you left off in the main storyline. So hopefully you see why I picked that side quest, because there wasn't a whole lot of tactical maneuvering, there were no secret doors that I gave away, and what other adventure do you get admonished by both a baby piglet and a sweet old lady who you turned down for spaghetti in the same place? I haven't seen it, but I will say this. For my kobolds and my baby players out there, chickens are not to be underestimated. The rest of y'all might be laughing, but as someone who's been pecked to death before and suffered the curse of being a were-chicken, this is triggering. And so once done with that, I headed back to Chapter 6, a side quest section, and then I could pick again, go shopping, or proceed in the main quest. And as I mentioned, I went ahead and did the other two side quests. They were a lot of fun. But once I was done with them and I was equipped and ready to go, with the last piece of sage wisdom from my quest giver ringing in my ears of don't die, I headed for the bandit hideout where the smugglers were operating out of. And the bandit lair is in an abandoned stone building in the forest. And it's a dungeon crawl full of deceit, treachery, and violence, some of it on your part. And it's a good time. And we get a good variety of enemies and challenges and some worthwhile loot. And upon returning to Makandar with the intel you obtained from the bandits, the quest giver says the troublemakers are in league with a foul wizard who has plagued this land for a long time. With your rise to notoriety in 4th level, he asks you to hunt down and destroy the master wizard once and for all. So you have time to recuperate, swap out companions if you want, which I didn't because the only other option was a piece of sausage, and I'm the only piece of sausage in this harem, and explore 3 new side quests. I did all 3 of those, and they ranged from meeting a goddess to destroying an undead menace and driving away creatures of the night threatening Mistwood from a lost guard tower. I dug the variety of side quests that we've seen in this module. They really do get a whole bunch of different moods and a whole bunch of different opportunities for you to explore. I was impressed by the depth of exploration I could get out of a solo adventure. But once ready to face the evil wizard, I went to Chapter 12 and the grand finale. The chapter is called the grand finale, so kind of on the nose, but the location is Stormview Manor. And let me give you a little flavor text from that. As you approach the manor, darkness looms. The bright sunny sky of summer in Farador is cast away by dark storm clouds. When you are within a few feet of the front gate, a slight trickle begins. A few more feet and the wind picks up, causing the squeaking gate to swing back and forth as you pass. The trickle quickly turns into a downpour as you officially find yourself at Stormview Manor. Ahead of you, up the path, is the front door. The front yard has not been maintained for a very, very long time. The grass is yellow and vines cover the windows and brick walls. Rubble broken off from the house lies before the structure. The yard wraps around the house and into what must be a backyard. You have a decision to make. If you enter the front door, see Area 2. If you walk around to the backyard, see Area 9C. And like in many choose-your-own-adventure style board games and books, you get an important decision of how you even get into the manor. I wound up going around back and things got spicy really quick. It's good that I had potions of healing and a cleric on hand, because I'm always of the opinion, why would I go in the front door? That's obviously where they're going to be trapping things. But I'm pretty sure my experience would have been quite a bit different depending on the decision I made. So these are meaningful decisions that I'm getting to make. I've seen published modules that are serious room by room railroads where you get one decision to make, and it better be the one that the module writer came up with. But in a solo adventure, I've got all these options ahead of me, man. This is a rich experience. I'm very impressed. And throughout the manor, we get interesting and lethal traps, clues to piece together, investigation and knowledge checks galore, an animated stuffed bear attack, accidental poisonings, yes, plural, Gordon Ramsay, a tough final battle, and sweet, sweet loot. If you survive, you make it a level 5, and Chapter 20 says that's a wrap. Ben Barsh thanks you for playing, gives a little detail on the setting's history, and hopes you had a good time. So while the adventure's over, we get into the appendices from here, beginning with new monsters and NPCs, which I liked. There was some creativity that went into these things. And the new magic items that I found really cool. Let me read you just a couple of them. So the Staff of the Angler, which I did not win. It's forged by the minions of the sea god Poseidon. The Staff of the Angler was created to aid adventurous fishermen in times of need. The The staff is a +1 magical staff that also provides the user with +1 to their spell attack rolls and spell save DC. The user also gains the ability to breathe underwater with a swim speed of 30 and may cast control water once per day. This spell uses your spell casting ability and spell save DC. There's a lot of utility in that thing. And there's a Night Jester's Lute. The Night Jester's Lute is a one-of-a-kind crafted instrument from the bardic halls of Myth Alar. This lute grants the user +1 onto their spell attack rolls and spell save DC. The user may also cast the following spells once per day each: Bane, Blindness, Deafness, Sleep, and Unseen Servant. The spells use your spell casting ability and spell save DC. And as a warlock with a limited spell selection, that was clutch. I was very happy to get that magic item. And this one, some people might say is overpowered, but I think in a solo system, this makes a lot of sense, and I like it in general. Ring of Requirement. Once the wearer attunes to this ring, they may make a life pact with a god, goddess, or charity. In doing so, the wearer donates 10% of their adventuring findings to the said deity or charity. As a reward for your service, you are given worldly protection. If you are fatally wounded, you instead are reduced to 1 hit point instead of 0. This ability can function only once per week. If you discontinue your charity, the ring no longer functions, and you are in the poor graces of the deity or charity. That's cool. It's not overly powerful. It has a real cost to it. I might up the percentage just to help balance it out. And it only works once per week. So if you get slammed, get back up and get slammed again, you're done for. But a little bit of divine intervention can pay off there. I think that's cool. We also get companion write-ups, and there are way more of these companions than I encountered, so this must be a way the main story arcs make differences in who you're going to encounter and who you can recruit. We wrap up with a treasure value table for items from this adventure, a wandering monster list, random contents of footlockers you might find, the races and subclasses we talked about, a random player character generator, the full maps, and quizzically that table of contents. So this is a beginner adventure that takes you from level 1 to 5. And I found the instructions and the flow of the material so easy to follow that you don't have to be an expert in any role-playing game to be able to follow along and do this. You just need a basic familiarity with how your chosen system works, and you'll be okay. So you never had to have been a DM in order to run this. And as a matter of fact, this might be helpful in teaching people who've never DM'd how to DM, because they DM for themselves. Just like with the black box edition of D&D, they had 2 separate versions of the starting adventure. One where you ran it for other people, but there was one where the person who was going to be the dungeon master ran themselves through it, and it was set up in a choose your own adventure style. I played through both of them I don't know how many times. Loved it. So this is one way of doing that. And I said I was going to contrast this with the DM yourself manuals and philosophies that have come up with the 5e era. And it's interesting stuff where you take a published campaign guide and you have a set of criteria and presuppositions that you agree to abide by, and you run yourself through Rise of Tiamat, Storm King's Thunder. Don't ever touch Descent into Avernus. That's the worst written thing I've ever read. And I've read schizophrenic alien conspiracy theories. This is worse than that and less entertaining. But where those are retrofitting on a solo play version to existing material, which is valuable in and of itself, this is purpose made for the solo experience. And so everything you read, you're supposed to be reading. There's no way that you're going to spoil your knowledge unless you go out of your way to spoil your knowledge. Whereas the DM yourself style, it's easy to spoil what the dangers are, what the hazards are that you might want to avoid. But it does its level best to mitigate that. And I respect it, I enjoyed it, and I'll probably use it myself someday. But for a solo adventuring experience, this is far more what I would prefer. And also the reason why I've bought more of Pacesetter Games solo adventure modules. And I'm going to try those out and see how they go. But I've still got 2 main story arcs with their side quests and companions to explore in this book. Now, when I bought it, I think it was $20, $25 brand new, and it's available on Pacesetter's website, so you can check it out there. And the single playthrough I did took me about 8 hours altogether. I had 3 sessions where I sat down and for a few hours played through it. And so this is a lot of adventuring material for a pretty low price. As a companion piece to this review, I did an interview with Ben Barsh about why did he make this module? What were his design considerations that went into it? And a few other questions, such as, why is the table of contents in the back of the book? So look forward to that interview. It was a heck of a lot of fun. Have any of you played this module? Or have you played any other solo modules from Pacesetter games or from any other publisher for any other system? Let me know. I'm interested in this stuff. As well as let me know your other thoughts in the comments below, and like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. So my dear friends, that's what I've got for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I wish you nothing but the best.